Golden Gate in Jerusalem has stood silent for nearly 500 years, sealed by kings, sultans, and centuries of prophecy. Not a crack, not a hinge, not a step has moved it since 1541, until now. Recent reports reveal its inner chambers quietly stirring, a whisper of movement that has stunned historians, religious scholars, and watchers of prophecy alike. This isn't archaeology. This isn't politics. This is a threshold tied to one of the oldest promises in history, the return of the Messiah. Every generation has tried to breach it. Ottoman rulers planned demolition. British forces halted plans in 1917. Israeli generals paused in 1967 under the warning of prophecy. Every attempt failed, blocked not by stone or mortar, but by forces beyond human understanding. And yet, for the first time in centuries, something is changing. The gate faces the Mount of Olives, the very place Zechariah predicted the Lord's return. Its alignment is perfect. Its seals remain. But the whispers growing within its walls suggest a shift, a moment approaching that could alter history forever. The question isn't just about a gate. It's about timing, destiny, and whether what we're witnessing is the first stirrings of Christ's return. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what happens next could be unlike anything you've ever seen. This gate is unlike any other. Both Jews and Christians look to it as the path of the Messiah. Jewish tradition holds that Israel's Redeemer will pass through it to restore the kingdom. Christians believe Jesus himself rode through it nearly 2,000 years ago on Palm Sunday, and that he will come again, not as a humble servant, but as King of Kings. That belief alone has terrified rulers across centuries. Because of this, the gate has been walled up for almost 500 years. In 1541, Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent ordered the sealing, filling the archways with heavy limestone blocks and placing a cemetery directly before it. His reasoning was brutal. If the Messiah were a priestly figure, he could not step across the impurity of graves. A wall of the dead would keep the living Redeemer away. But prophecy cannot be outmaneuvered. Ezekiel had written that the eastern gate would remain shut, that no man could enter by it, because the Lord himself had already passed through it. To Christians, that moment came when Jesus entered the city from the Mount of Olives and walked through this very gate. From then on, the gate was to remain closed until the day of his return. And so the Golden Gate became more than stone. It became a divine lock. Every brick laid by Suleiman, every grave dug before its threshold, was not a defense against prophecy, but part of its fulfillment. The enemy's attempt to block destiny had instead woven destiny tighter. For centuries afterward, no one dared to touch it. Empires rose, empires fell. Armies marched through Jerusalem again and again. But the gate remained. Its silence was more commanding than a trumpet, more powerful than a sword. Other gates of the city opened, closed, crumbled, and were rebuilt. But the Golden Gate stood frozen, defiant, unchanging. And yet in recent years, something strange has stirred. Quiet reports began to surface of the inner chamber, the space behind the sealed arch, being opened. Photographs leaked of worshippers kneeling inside, their hands pressed against ancient stones. Videos surfaced showing prayers whispered in shadows where, for centuries, no prayers had been spoken. Official voices said nothing. There was no public declaration, no acknowledgement, only silence. But the silence itself was deafening. What does it mean when a gate tied to prophecy begins to stir from within? Not a breaking of stone, not an act of demolition, but a subtle movement, a whisper behind the wall. For those who watch the times and seasons, it was enough to send a shiver down the spine. This is the mystery of the Golden Gate. It is more than an architectural feature. It is geography aligned with eternity. It stands directly opposite the Mount of Olives, the mountain upon which prophecy declares the Messiah will place his feet, the mountain destined to split in two at his arrival. The gate and the mountain face one another like a mirror, one waiting for the other, one silent, the other poised for the great moment. The alignment is exact, as if the stones themselves were drawn to a line etched by the finger of God. And so the story of this gate is not just a tale of stone and mortar. It is a story of fear and strategy, of rulers attempting to control destiny and prophecy, bending their efforts into its own fulfillment. Suleiman sealed the gate, thinking he was stopping the Messiah. In reality, he was unknowingly echoing the words of Scripture, preserving the gate exactly as Ezekiel said it must remain. His wall of graves was meant to keep the Redeemer out, but prophecy insists the Redeemer is not held back by stone or death. Now, with whispers that the chamber inside has opened, the question is not whether men have broken through. The question is whether prophecy itself is beginning to breathe again. The Golden Gate has never been only stone. It has been a silent witness. And when a witness stirs, it is not without meaning. And time and again, history shows that whenever men have tried to silence this witness, something greater has intervened. In 1917, Muslim authorities drew up plans to erase the Golden Gate completely, to tear down its walls and remove its foundations. Yet, on the very day demolition was scheduled, the impossible happened. British troops marched into Jerusalem and seized control. The gate stood untouched. Historians may call it coincidence, but to those watching prophecy, it looked as though unseen hands had stopped the hammers mid-swing. Half a century later, during the Six-Day War of 1967, the gate again stood at the center of destiny. Israeli forces, flush with victory and in possession of the old city, considered reopening the sealed passage. It could have been done in hours. One order, a few explosives, and the stones would have fallen. But a rabbi intervened, declaring that only the Messiah himself could walk through it. The soldiers obeyed, not the command of generals, but the weight of prophecy. Once again, the Golden Gate remained closed, as though time itself was protecting it. From that moment forward, attempts to alter or reclaim the gate have all failed. Politics shifted, rulers changed, wars ignited, but no one has been able to force its opening. It has resisted earthquakes, invasions, and endless disputes over sovereignty. Something or someone is holding it shut. The gate doesn't just exist as an artifact of stone. It exists as a boundary between eras. One side belongs to history, the other to destiny. And now, whispers suggest that boundary is thinning. Unlike every other entrance into Jerusalem's walls, the Golden Gate stands apart. Jaffa Gate, Damascus Gate, Zion Gate, each has been repaired, reopened, or altered over centuries. They have evolved with the city's rise and fall, but not this one. It remains sealed, unchanged, defiant. Its silence has become a statement. While every other door breathes with the pulse of daily life, this one speaks with its refusal to move. It's not that the Golden Gate is dead, it's that it is waiting, protected not by guards or soldiers, but by the very silence that surrounds it. It does not open to commerce, to politics, or to armies. It waits for something greater. Its stillness itself has become part of the prophecy. And yet, the silence is not absolute. In 2019, leaked photos and shaky videos began to surface online. Not through official channels, not through governments, just quiet uploads, fragments of candlelight, faint outlines of arches, the hush of voices rising in prayer. They appeared to show worshippers inside the inner chamber of the Golden Gate. No public announcement followed, no archaeological report, only a faint whisper on the digital wind that something hidden was stirring. Those who saw the images described a strange stillness, as though stepping into a place that was both sacred and forbidden. The outer wall remains sealed, the exterior defiant. But inside, worship has already begun. For centuries, people have pressed their hands against the stones, praying outside. But now, for the first time in generations, prayers have echoed from within. This shift wasn't loud. There was no breaking news alert, no formal recognition. Instead, it moved like prophecy always has, not in shouts, but in whispers. Scripture never promised fireworks or announcements. Jesus himself warned his return would arrive suddenly, like the days of Noah, when life seemed ordinary until the flood came. Quiet alignments, hidden signs, subtle stirrings. That is how prophecy breathes. The Golden Gate now tells a double story. Outside, it remains sealed, the wall unbroken, the prophecy intact. But inside, something has changed. People have entered. Prayers have risen. Not in defiance of prophecy, but in harmony with it. It is as though the inner chamber has awakened. Not with violence, not with conquest, but with reverence. What does it mean when the gate begins to stir? The answer may not lie in force, but in faith. The whispers suggest that what is happening isn't destruction, but awakening. Something within the gate is alive, not breaking, but breathing. Not collapsing, but preparing. Centuries of silence have been pierced not by swords, but by whispers of devotion. The gate, long thought sealed and untouchable, now carries within it the faint hum of prayer. That hum is growing, spreading, resonating like a heartbeat beneath stone. And prophecy tells us that heartbeats don't echo aimlessly. They pulse in alignment, in direction. From a distance, the Golden Gate doesn't just sit in the eastern wall. It points. Directly across from it rises the Mount of Olives, a ridge that has witnessed triumphs, tears, and promises. The alignment is so exact, so deliberate, it feels less like architecture and more like destiny. Stand on the Mount of Olives, and your eyes fall straight on the sealed gate. Look back from the walls, and the mountain stares back in silence, mirror-like, as though heaven itself had drawn a line between them. According to the prophet Zechariah, this is no ordinary geography. He wrote that when the Lord returns, his feet will touch the Mount of Olives, and the mountain itself will split in two. A valley will form, cutting east to west, clearing a path not made by human hands, but by divine force. And what lies directly opposite that valley's entrance? The Golden Gate. It isn't coincidence. It's a setup, waiting for its moment. 2,000 years ago, Jesus walked that alignment. From the Mount of Olives, he descended on a donkey, the people waving palm branches, crying, "Hosanna." He entered the city through the Golden Gate, not as a warrior king, but as a humble servant, fulfilling prophecy with gentleness. That entrance was only the beginning. The scriptures tell of another return, this time not in humility, but in glory, not as a servant, but as King of Kings. And when he comes, this same alignment will guide his steps, a straight line from the mountain into the heart of Jerusalem. It is not poetry, it is prophecy carved into the stones of geography. A gate that faces a mountain prepared to split, a valley destined to open. These are not random placements. They are markers, waiting for a moment that has not yet come. And yet, the mystery of the Golden Gate is not bound to one faith alone. For Jews, it is the passage through which the Messiah will come to restore Israel, to bring redemption, to establish peace. Generations have prayed facing that gate, yearning for the day it swings open at last. For Christians, it carries an equally powerful promise. They believe Jesus has already passed through once, but that he will pass through again when he returns to establish his kingdom on earth. Despite centuries of division, despite endless debates, the gate holds a strange unity. Both traditions see it as the marker of ultimate change, the door through which history ends and eternity begins. The Hebrew name for it isn't the gate of power or the gate of judgment. It is Sha'ar Harachamim, the gate of mercy. And mercy, unlike politics or doctrine, belongs to all who seek it. The gate does not argue theology. It simply stands, holding within its stones the expectations of millions. It is a symbol of convergence, a place where two paths meet, a single doorway carrying the hopes of two faiths. Jews wait for a Messiah to come. Christians wait for the Messiah to return. And both look to the same gate for the answer. History, however, has not left the gate untouched. Time and again, rulers, generals, and leaders have tried to breach it. In the early 1500s, the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent sealed it shut, determined that no prophecy would pass through on his watch. A century later, his successors reinforced it with stone, making sure no army or Messiah could enter. But the prophecy didn't bend. It only deepened. In the early 1900s, Ottoman leaders again considered demolishing the gate entirely, erasing it from the wall. Yet before they could act, British forces swept into Jerusalem during World War I, taking control and halting the plan. What was supposed to be destruction turned into preservation. The gate endured. In 1967, Israeli forces stormed the old city during the Six-Day War. With dynamite, bulldozers, and soldiers at their command, they had every tool to unseal the gate. But when the moment came, hesitation fell upon them. A rabbi's warning rang out, "Only the Messiah may pass through." And for reasons no general could fully explain, the soldiers obeyed. The gate remained sealed. Even more curious is the cemetery that lies directly in front of it. Centuries ago, Muslim rulers placed graves across its path, believing that no holy man, a priestly Messiah, would cross ground considered ritually unclean. It was meant as a barrier, a final safeguard. Yet prophecy does not stumble on human obstacles. A graveyard cannot bind a king who rose from the dead. The very act of trying to block the prophecy only confirmed its power. These moments aren't just footnotes of history. They are pauses, interruptions, delays that reveal something larger. The Golden Gate has resisted armies, plans, even bulldozers. Each time it seemed ready to fall, something happened. An invasion, a warning, a turn of fate that kept it sealed. Not destroyed, not erased, but preserved. As if history itself bends around this gate, refusing to let it open until the appointed hour. This isn't mere preservation, it's restraint. The gate is not waiting for kings or governments. It isn't waiting for archaeologists or engineers. It waits for the one moment it was built for, the moment when the line from the Mount of Olives to its stone threshold becomes a path of return. And until then, history itself seems to conspire to keep it closed. The Golden Gate is more than architecture. It is anticipation turned to stone, absorbing the footsteps of prophets, the ambitions of rulers, and the prayers of millions. It has defied politics, resisted war, and stood immovable against centuries. Yet its silence is not empty. Every block, every seal, every untouched threshold hums with expectation. Once, a donkey passed through it, on a day now called Palm Sunday, when palms waved and hosannas filled the air. That moment was only a shadow of something greater. And now, with whispers of chambers stirring and prayers rising from within, the silence feels alive, like the sound of time itself inhaling. Jerusalem has always been more than a city. It is not merely a capital, it is not merely ancient. It was chosen, not by the will of man, not by the ambition of rulers, but by the decree of God Himself. And at the eastern wall of this chosen city sits the Golden Gate, a locked door facing eternity. Nations rise and fall, wars rage across deserts and seas, rumors of peace and rumors of war flood the earth. But the gate endures. It stands, untouched, a sentinel over the city of prophecy. The whispers of a third temple rise and fall like storm clouds, gathering momentum in quiet corners of faith, drawing eyes back to this sealed threshold. Across from it, the Mount of Olives waits, watching silently, the place where feet once pressed into the dust, and where prophecy says they will press again. This is not fear. This is not myth. It is alignment, a call to readiness. The words of Jesus echo, words spoken not to terrify, but to awaken. When you see these things, lift your heads, for your redemption is near. And if Jerusalem is the epicenter of prophecy, then the Golden Gate is its heartbeat, silent, steady, refusing to move until the appointed hour. And now, the silence feels different. For centuries, the gate has remained still, sealed against armies and kings, defiant against bulldozers and plans. But in recent years, something has shifted. It is not that the gate swings open. It is that it stirs. A faint movement, not of stone, but of significance. The whispers are not of earthquakes or bombs, but of prayers rising in its chambers. A breath, not a breach. The gate awakens, not like a door thrown wide, but like a living being taking in air after a long sleep. No brick, no grave, no decree will hold forever against what God has ordained. The seals that men placed in fear may have only confirmed what prophecy foretold, that the gate will not yield until the one who was promised comes to walk through it. This is no longer a question of if. It is only a question of when. And when the stones finally yield, when the silence breaks, the world will not merely witness history, it will witness fulfillment. The Golden Gate does not exist for tourists. It does not exist for photographs or politics. It exists as a hinge between ages, the boundary between the world as it is and the world as it will be. Its very stones are testimony. They declare that what was spoken will be carried out, that promises whispered in Scripture will rise in reality. The moment that gate opens will not be another entry in the history books. It will be the final chapter written in stone, the threshold where prophecy becomes present. And so the world watches, some with fear, some with anticipation, some with skepticism. Yet the gate is not swayed by human opinion. It breathes, it waits, and one day it will open, not to the hands of kings or the force of armies, but to the one figure who was always destined to walk its path. When that moment comes, there will be no need for argument, no need for debate. The stones themselves will testify. The Golden Gate is not silent. It is speaking, and its message is clear. History is not finished. Prophecy is not forgotten, and the countdown is not empty. The gate is breathing again, and its breath carries the weight of eternity. Like this video, share it, subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments, because what is unfolding in Jerusalem right now may be the most important story of our lifetime.